I've always wondered, if that day hadn't happened, would my life have been different? If my father hadn't collapsed in that warm, familiar kitchen, would I have grown up with a complete family, with a childhood untouched by pain and abandonment? But life doesn't deal in what-ifs. That morning the kitchen was filled with the rich aroma of melting butter, the slight crisp of pancake batter searing on an old cast-iron skillet. My father was making panda-shaped pancakes, my absolute favorite. He wore his blue apron, whisking the batter with one hand while whistling a cheerful tune. "Hey, princess, come help your old man out," he called, grinning, waving the spatula like it was a magic wand. I giggled, hopped off the sofa, leaving my rag doll on the floor, and ran toward him. I never reached him. The spatula hit the tiled floor with a sharp, jarring sound that sliced through the peaceful morning. My father froze, his eyes widening as if an invisible hand had tightened around him. Then, he collapsed, one hand clutching his chest. I remember my mother's scream, the chair crashing to the ground, my own frantic cries, but all of it blurred into a distorted, fragmented memory. In the blink of an eye, my father was gone. The man who used to carry me on his shoulders, chase me around the backyard on summer afternoons, and teach me how to tie my shoelaces, was now just a name engraved on a cold stone. My mother, Olivia, was utterly broken in the days following the funeral. She cried until she had no more tears left, clutching my father's old shirt through endless sleepless nights. I remember thinking, she would never get over this. But as it turned out, she let go faster than I ever expected. Less than a year later, she began to change. The empty chair at the dinner table no longer felt like a void. Music played in the house again. I began to hear her laugh. Not the forced hollow kind, but a real, soft, contented laugh. I thought she was learning to heal. But I was wrong. She had found someone else. One autumn afternoon, I came home and saw my mother sitting in the living room with a stranger. He had salt and pepper hair, deep brown eyes, and a kind smile. "Sophia, come here, sweetheart, this is Peter." I stood frozen, as if I had been pushed out of the world I once knew. Peter was a widower, my mother explained. They had met in a grief support group. He used to be a teacher, now he worked as a financial consultant. He was kind, gentle, and patient. At least with my mother. But I couldn't ignore the fact that he was not my father. A few months later, they got married. I still remember my mother's wedding day. I wore a pale pink dress, standing at the edge of the hall while she and Peter held hands, exchanging vows. No one asked me how I felt. No one noticed me biting my lip to keep from crying. From that day on, Peter became part of our lives. But he was never truly my father, and that's when everything started to change. Not for the better. When my mother told me I was going to have a sibling, I thought it would be a good thing. I imagined holding my baby sibling's tiny hand, teaching them how to swing on the playground, sharing whispered secrets under the glow of a nightlight. I had seen my friends with younger siblings. Sure, they complained about babysitting, but there was always something special in their eyes when they talked about them. But from the moment Peter announced, "Sophia, you're going to be a big sister," something felt off. My mother was no longer my mother. She stopped asking me how school was. She stopped checking my homework before bed. Every thought, every conversation, revolved around the baby that hadn't even arrived yet. "You need to be more careful, Sophia, don't run in the house." "I don't want to be stressed." "Sophia, you can make your own breakfast, can't you? Mommy is really tired." "Don't be so loud, your baby sibling can hear you." And then, on a bitter winter morning, Sarah was born. My mother cried. Peter cried. The nurses in the hospital praised my mother for doing such a great job. I stood in the corner of the room, watching the tiny red-faced baby in my mother's arms, waiting for the moment she would look at me, take my hand, and tell me that we were still a family. That moment never came. From that day on, my mother disappeared. Not literally, she still lived in the same house, still cooked, still cleaned, still existed in my daily life. But she was no longer my mother. Every ounce of her love and attention now belonged to Sarah, the perfect daughter she had always wanted. Each morning, I no longer heard my mother calling me down for breakfast. Instead, I heard soft lullabies, tender whispers, the quiet footsteps pacing back and forth in Sarah's room. Every family plan, dinners, vacations, birthdays, revolved around Sarah's sleep schedule, her mood, her needs. Some days, I went to school on an empty stomach because my mother forgot to make breakfast. Some nights, I sat with my homework, waiting for her to help me with a difficult math problem, only to hear her distracted voice say, "Sophia, you're a big girl now, you can do it on your own, can't you?" Yes, I could do it on my own. And so I did. Peter, though kind, couldn't do much beyond offering me worried glances. He tried. I knew he did. He took me to karate classes, sat for hours watching me train, cheered me on when I earned my first belt. He bought me a new sketchbook whenever he saw me lost in my drawings, but he could never replace what I had lost. Once, when Sarah turned 2, I asked my mother, "Mom, can I have a day just for the two of us, just you and me?" She paused for a moment. For a fleeting second I thought she might say yes. But then she turned to look at Sarah playing in her crib, smiled gently, and said, "We can't leave your sister behind, Sophia. Sarah needs me." And I don't? That question never left my lips. I simply lowered my head, clenched my fists and nodded. Just like I always did. As Sarah grew, the distance between me and my mother widened. I became the silent helper in my own home. I mopped the floors while my mother soothed Sarah. I folded laundry when she didn't have time. I held Sarah when she was too tired. Then, when I was only 13, my mother announced that she was quitting her job. "Sarah needs me at home, Sophia, you understand, don't you?" No, I didn't. I didn't understand why a 2-year-old needed her mother all day, while a 13-year-old didn't. But I said nothing, I just nodded. Every child has a moment when they realize that life isn't fair. But I didn't just realize it, I lived it. Every morning, I woke up in my small simple room, brushed my own teeth, picked out my own clothes, grabbed my own bag, and left for school without anyone reminding me. But Sarah? Sarah never had to do anything by herself. My mother was always there, picking out every dress, tying every ribbon, placing every bite of food on her plate, with the delicate care of a queen tending to her princess. I don't remember the last time my mother asked me if I was hungry. But I remember the hollow ache in my stomach every morning at school, the way my teacher's eyes softened when she noticed I had no lunch. At first, I hoped, maybe today, my mother just forgot. But after dozens of times I realized she had never thought about it to begin with. I also don't know when cleaning Sarah's room became my responsibility. At first, my mother only asked for small favors. "Sophia, can you pick up your sister's toys for a second? My hands are full." I did it, thinking it was temporary. But it became an unspoken rule. Sarah grew up in a spotless room that she never cleaned herself, and every day I picked up after her, the clothes she left on the floor, the toys she scattered everywhere. "Sophia, help your sister for a bit, okay?" A bit, a bit, a bit. One day while I was folding Sarah's clothes, Peter passed by. He stopped at the door, watching me for a moment, before speaking in a quiet voice. "Sophia, why are you doing this?" I froze, a small pink sweater still in my hands. I didn't know how to answer. Peter stepped into the room, picked up a doll from the floor and let out a long sigh. "You're not a maid, Sophia." But what else was I? Peter was the only one in the house who truly saw me. On the mornings my mother forgot to make me breakfast, Peter quietly left a sandwich on the kitchen counter. When my mother didn't remember I had an important test, Peter was the one who wished me luck before I left. And when I sat alone in the corner of the living room on cold evenings, he was the one who took me to the movies and bought me hot chocolate. But Peter couldn't change anything. Every time he tried to speak up about my mother's blatant favoritism, it always ended in long, exhausting arguments. "Sarah is still little, Peter. Every baby needs their mother more." "Sarah is 6 years old, Olivia. What about Sophia? She needs you too." But my mother never listened, she never did. Sarah was always the priority, and I was just a shadow on the sidelines. Peter tried many ways to make it up to me, but I knew he was powerless too. One of the biggest things he ever did for me was signing me up for karate classes 3 times a week. "Sophia, you need something that's just for you," he said as he dropped me off at my first lesson. I wasn't sure. I had never thought of myself as strong or fast, but as I stepped into the class, as I felt my body move through the motions, I understood what Peter meant. There, I wasn't the forgotten child. I wasn't the unpaid babysitter. I was just me. Sophia. Someone who could defend herself. Peter never missed a single practice. Every time I improved, he would smile proudly and say, "I'm so proud of you, Sophia." For a while I thought that if I got better, if I worked harder, maybe my mother would finally see me. But no, that never happened. She was too busy with Sarah, too consumed with the perfect dreams she had built around her. And I started to realize that I didn't belong here anymore. I stood on the graduation stage, gripping my diploma tightly, scanning the rows of seats in the audience. Peter sat in the front row, clapping proudly. And my mother? She was there too, but she wasn't looking at me. I knew what she was thinking. She wasn't happy that I had earned a scholarship. She wasn't proud that I was standing on this stage. She was thinking about Sarah. Just like always. Sarah was at home, not even bothering to attend the ceremony. 16 years old, and my sister still lived like a child who had never grown up. Her room was always lit by the glow of a computer screen, where she spent hours playing games and chatting with her useless friends. After the ceremony, Peter pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, Sophia." I swallowed hard, trying not to cry. And my mother? She said nothing except one short sentence. "We need to talk about your college plans." I knew what was coming. I had been expecting this for a long time. She didn't waste time getting to the point. "Have you really thought about college?" She sat across from me at the dining table, absent-mindedly turning her teacup in her hands. "Or maybe you should wait a little while. It might be better if we save that money to help Sarah later." I let out a hollow laugh. "Save the money for Sarah?" She nodded, completely unashamed. "You understand, don't you? Your sister needs more support. She's not as ready as you are. You're strong, Sophia. You can manage on your own. So I don't deserve a chance." I clenched my fists, forcing my voice to stay calm. She didn't answer right away. Then she sighed. "Sophia, your stepfather worked hard for that money. It's family money, not just yours." I didn't need to ask to know that Sarah had never been asked to share anything in her life. Peter stepped into the room, his voice cutting through the tense air. "That money is for Sophia. That was my decision." My mother frowned. "Peter, I'm just thinking about both of our children's futures." "Sophia is your child too," Peter emphasized every word. My mother fell silent. We all knew the truth. I had never been her child, the way Sarah was loved. I left home 2 months later, carrying only a small suitcase and a promise to myself I would never live there again. Marshall University opened up a new world. No more hearing my mother call me for chores. No more Sarah and her endless demands. For the first time in my life, I was free. I threw myself into my studies, worked 2 jobs to cover my expenses. I barely had time to think about my mother or Sarah, until the calls started coming. At first the calls came from Peter. "Your mother is worried about you, Sophia. Come visit when you can." I knew he was trying to be a bridge between us, but I had no intention of going back. Then my mother started calling. At first it was just small talk, but soon she stopped pretending. "Sarah is struggling," she said, her voice tinged with blame. "She has no direction. She needs you to guide her. Your father and we can't get through to her." I knew exactly what she wasn't saying. "We need your help." After everything she had done, after placing Sarah above me in every way, I had learned to tune my mother out. I refused to come home that Christmas. Then for Sarah's birthday. While I kept moving forward, Sarah kept spiraling downward. When I finally visited the next summer, I barely recognized the sister my mother had always adored. Sarah was no longer the sweet little girl I once knew. She spent all day in her room, buried in pointless video games, surrounding herself with friends who did nothing but smoke and drink. Peter had tried to pull her out of that lifestyle. He had even offered her a job at his construction company, but my mother had been furious. "She's not meant for manual labor," my mother had shouted. "She's capable of so much more." Peter frowned. "More? Olivia, she does nothing, she's lazy and completely dependent on you." My mother's face turned red, her voice shaking. "She just needs time, she's smart, she's just following her passion." I looked at Sarah. My sister sat on the couch, not even bothering to look up, scrolling through her phone without a care. I knew the truth. Sarah had no passion. She didn't care about her future. Because my mother had never made her take responsibility for anything. The argument ended the way they always did. My mother defending Sarah at all costs, while Peter could only sigh in defeat. And me? I stood up, grabbed my purse and said, "I have to go, I have work in the city." My mother looked at me, disappointment flashing in her eyes, but I didn't care anymore. I had chosen my path. And Sarah had chosen hers. The only difference was that her path led to a dead end. Peter passed away on a cold autumn morning. I got the call from my mother at 6 a.m., her voice so shaky I could barely understand her words. But she didn't need to say much. Just 2 words. "Peter's gone." And I knew that one of the only people who had ever truly loved me was gone forever. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling so empty that I couldn't react right away. My heart clenched, but I didn't cry. I only thought about my mother, about Sarah, about the house I had left behind. And I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I flew home the next day. From a distance, I could already see that the house looked worse than ever. The front lawn, once neatly trimmed when Peter was alive, was overgrown and unkempt. The wooden fence was chipping, his truck was no longer parked in the driveway. As I stepped onto the porch, a cold, hollow feeling settled in my chest. My mother opened the door, her eyes swollen, her hair a tangled mess. She looked thinner than the last time I had seen her, as if grief had been eating away at her. But what unsettled me most was the way she looked at me, like I was a stranger. "Come in," she said, her voice dry and brittle. Inside, the air was thick and suffocating. Sarah lounged on the couch, eyes glued to her phone. She didn't bother to stand up, didn't acknowledge me, didn't even look like she was mourning. I clenched my fists, but forced my voice to stay even. "Are you okay, Mom?" She took a shaky breath. "How could I be okay? Peter is gone." Her voice cracked. "I don't know what to do, Sophia. I really don't." I wanted to hug her, to tell her that things would be okay. But I knew that wasn't true. Because from the moment Peter was gone, this family had been in free fall, with no one left to hold it together. I stayed for 3 days after the funeral. Peter had died of a heart attack while at work. He collapsed right there in his office. His co-workers didn't have time to call for help. His death left a void that couldn't be filled. Not just in my heart, but in every part of my mother's and Sarah's lives. Without Peter, the family's only source of income was gone. I didn't know how they would manage. Maybe my mother didn't know either. On the 3rd evening, I sat in the kitchen, quietly sipping a cup of hot tea, when my mother walked in, a stack of papers in her hands. She placed them on the table in front of me, her eyes clouded with exhaustion. "Sophia, I need your help." I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. "Peter's savings aren't enough," she sighed. "I can't cover everything on my own. Sarah, she's not ready to take care of herself. I was hoping you could help, at least until things settle down." I let out a dry laugh. "Settle down? How, Mom? Sarah isn't in school, she doesn't work, she's not even trying to change. Do you think I'm going to support her for you?" My mother clenched her fists. "She's your sister, Sophia. You should help your family." I looked at her for a long time. Family? When have I ever truly been part of this family? I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but I can't." For the first time in years, my mother didn't argue. She just nodded. her eyes empty. I understand. But she didn't. Because the moment I left that house, I heard from Aunt Linda that my mother had started selling Peter's belongings. It started with the small things. The old truck Peter had loved. Gone. Sold for a fraction of its worth. His carefully kept toolbox. Disappeared. Then came the bigger things. Peter's antique watch, the one his father had given him as a young man, pawned. The beautiful furniture he had once taken pride in. One by one. Vanishing from the house. All for Sarah. My mother couldn't bear to let my sister go without. She couldn't let her face the reality that life was no longer as easy as it used to be. And Sarah? She still sat there, in her darkened room, her face pale from too many sleepless nights playing games. She hadn't changed. My mother did everything to keep her comfortable. But in the process, she lost everything. I stopped answering my mother's calls. I never went back to that house. Everything I knew about them, I heard from Aunt Lina. "They're struggling, Sophia," she said in a phone call. "Your mother has sold nearly everything of value, all that's left is the house." I closed my eyes, feeling something unfamiliar rise inside me. Not sorrow, not regret. Just a strange sense of relief. I had done everything I could, and now? I had let go. I didn't know what the future held for my mother and Sarah, but I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't return until my mother truly respected me. The call came on a Tuesday night, just as I was cleaning my apartment after a long day at the office. "Sophia, I need your help." I froze, phone pressed to my ear, a chill running down my spine. How long had it been since my mother last called me? "Help with what?" I asked, my voice turning cold. She let out a heavy sigh. "Money. I'm out of money." I closed my eyes and leaned back against my chair. I knew this was coming. Everything she had sold after Peter's death must have run out. That old house was the only thing left. And I knew my mother would never ask Sarah to take responsibility for anything. "How much do you need?" She hesitated. $1,500 a month? At least until I can figure things out. I let out a dry laugh. "Figure things out? How, Mom? Sarah still doesn't have a job, does she?" A long silence stretched between us. Then her voice lowered, though there was still a hint of irritation. "She's looking. She just hasn't found the right fit yet." I laughed, not bothering to hide the sarcasm in my tone. "Sarah is 26, she's never held a real job. When are you going to admit that she has no intention of being independent?" "Sophia, don't talk about your sister that way," my mother snapped. "She just needs more time. She's more sensitive than you. She's not as strong as you. You have a career, a stable life. You can help, can't you?" I could. The real question was, did I want to? But no matter what, I couldn't bring myself to completely abandon her. "Fine, I'll send the money," I said, and even I didn't fully understand why I agreed. My mother immediately relaxed, thanking me over and over, promising that it was only temporary. I knew she was lying, but I still set up an automatic transfer every month. 1,500. Enough to upgrade my apartment. Enough to travel. Enough to do so many things for myself. But instead I was paying to support someone who refused to grow up. Time passed in silence for a year. Every month, I watched $1,500 leave my account without so much as a thank you in return. When I called home, my mother only talked about Sarah, as if she were the center of the universe. "Sarah is trying, you know. She's working on some really promising online projects. Sarah has a boyfriend now, a really great guy. He might help her grow her career." But every time I visited, I saw the same Sarah, still glued to a screen, still leeching off my mother, still with no plans for her future. I expected nothing different. But I never imagined the truth would be worse than I thought. I found the will on a Sunday when I decided to visit unannounced. The house looked worse than ever. The floors were covered in trash. The kitchen was cluttered with empty pizza boxes. And Sarah was sprawled out on the couch, eyes glued to her phone. "Where's Mom?" I asked. Sarah shrugged, not even looking up. In her room. I walked straight to my mother's bedroom. When I opened the door, I found her sitting on the bed, pen in hand, a stack of papers in front of her. "What are you doing?" I asked, my eyes catching the words, "Last Will and Testament," printed at the top of one of the pages. She flinched, hurriedly trying to cover it up. But I was faster. I grabbed the document, my eyes scanning the lines. And when I reached the end, it felt like something inside me had been crushed. Everything, the house, the remaining assets, was being left to Sarah. There wasn't a single mention of me. Not a single thing was mine. I lifted my head and met my mother's gaze. "Care to explain this?" My mother bit her lip, then let out a sigh. "Sophia, I know you won't need it. You have your own life, you can take care of yourself. But Sarah is different. She needs a place to stay, a safe place. I just want to make sure she never has to worry about the future." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you not think I'm your child too?" She stayed silent. I stepped closer. "Say it. Have you ever truly loved me?" She didn't look away. No more lies to cover up the truth. She looked at me, more honest than she had ever been before, and said, "Not as much as Sarah. I never loved you as much as I loved her. You were always too independent, too strong. But Sarah needed me. She was better than you in every way." The pain hit like a punch to the chest. I had always known my mother favored Sarah. But I never thought she would say it so plainly. My fists clenched, every part of me screaming to say something, to yell, to fight back, to demand fairness. But instead, I just smiled. An empty, hollow smile. "Thank you for finally being honest." I set the will down on the bed, turned around, and walked away. I didn't look back. I had spent my whole life chasing my mother's approval. But now, I was done. She still hadn't accepted a daughter like me. I left my mother's house that day without a single glance back. Sitting in my car, my grip tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Her last words echoed in my head. "I never loved you as much as Sarah. You were always alone, but she was always better than you." For the first time in my life, I didn't feel sadness or anger. I unlocked my phone, opened my banking app, and went to the automatic transfer section. $1,500 a month. For over a year I had been supporting them, receiving nothing but disregard in return. I pressed cancel payment without hesitation. It was done. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat, pressed down on the gas, and drove away from that old road. This time, I knew I would never come back. I had expected my mother's reaction. But she was worse than I thought. Less than a day after stopping the payments, my phone buzzed nonstop with missed calls and messages. "Mom, Sophia, what's wrong with the bank account? The money didn't come in this month." "Mom, did you forget? Maybe it's a system error. Can you resend it right away? I need it." "Mom, answer me now." I didn't respond. 3 days later, the messages changed in tone. "Mom, are you really this selfish? Are you just going to let your mother and sister starve?" "Sarah, what the hell are you doing? You know Mom needs that money. Stop acting like you're better than her." I sighed, scrolling through the dozens of messages before blocking both of their numbers. I was done with their manipulations. But my mother didn't stop. She started messaging me on Facebook, leaving comments on my Instagram, even emailing me with dramatic subject lines. "I'm struggling. Do you really not care? Sophia, you're heartless. Sarah has been crying because of you. You'll regret this when I'm gone." I didn't finish reading. I simply blocked all her accounts. 3 weeks later, Sarah reached out through an unknown number. "Do you have 5 minutes?" Her voice was cold. I was silent for a moment before replying. "Make it quick." Sarah scoffed. "You can't do this to Mom. You can't just walk away from your responsibility like this." I gripped my phone tighter, but my voice remained calm. "I'm not walking away from responsibility, Sarah. I'm just stopping people from taking advantage of me." "Taking advantage? Mom raised you your whole life. You owe her, Sophia." I laughed. "Mom raised me? No, Sarah, I raised myself since I was 8. What about you? Have you ever worked a single day in your life? Silence. I continued. If mom needs money, you can get a job. Like an adult. Mom can't work anymore, she's struggling, she shouted. Not my problem. My response was blunt. Sarah's voice turned sharp. You'll regret abandoning your family. I smirked. Family? I never really had one. And then I hung up. 3 days later, I received one final message from my mother. I will miss you. No apology, no remorse. Just one last attempt to make me feel guilty. I felt nothing. 6 years passed since I left that house and cut all ties. I built a whole new life. A small home with a lovely garden, a stable job, and most importantly, the peace I had always longed for. No more guilt-tripping messages. No more demanding calls. No longer feeling like a shadow in my own family. I had learned to let go, to live better, to help those who truly needed it. But then, on a quiet winter afternoon, while sitting in my favorite cafe, my phone suddenly rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. But something made me pick up. Sophia, it's Mom. I froze. How long had it been since I last heard her voice? I'm sorry. 2 words, spoken slowly, heavily, as if she had carried them for years. I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I was too blind, too stubborn. I lost you. Her voice cracked. And I almost lost Sarah, too. I frowned. Sarah? She took a deep breath before continuing. She left after the money ran out. She lost everything, had to survive on her own. But then she realized she couldn't live like that forever. She changed, Sophia. She's working now. I was silent. I never thought I'd hear my mother admit that Sarah needed to grow up too. I miss you so much, she whispered, her voice weak. If possible, I'd like to see you one more time. I could refuse. I could hang up and continue the life I had built for myself. But a part of me, the part that still remembered Peter, the part that still wished my family could change, told me I should go back. I took a deep breath. Mom, I'll come visit. The next day, I drove back to the old house, the place I once swore I would never return to. The house looked familiar, yet something felt different. The garden was tended, the porch was cleaner, and the windows were no longer covered in dust. There were signs of change. My mother opened the door, and I barely recognized her. She looked much older. Deep lines etched across her face, but her eyes no longer held the same distance as before. Come in. I stepped into the living room, and the biggest surprise was waiting for me. Sarah. She looked at me with eyes I had never seen before. No arrogance. No entitlement. Hey, she said. Her voice lacked the indifference it once had. I nodded, taking a seat across from her. Silence stretched between us until my mother finally spoke. Sarah has a job now, Sophia, she said. Her voice a mix of pride and emotion. I turned to my sister. What are you doing? Sarah gave a small smile. Accounting for a small company. It's nothing glamorous, but I'm taking care of myself. And I help Mom too. I raised an eyebrow. Really? She nodded. I know. You don't believe me. But after you left, I realized. I couldn't keep living off other people. I used to think Mom would always take care of me, but then I understood that she couldn't do it forever. When you cut ties, I was furious. But later, I realized. You were right. I looked at my mother. She lowered her head, wringing her hands together. I was wrong, Sophia, wrong with both of you. I never taught Sarah how to grow up, and I let you carry too much on your own. And because of my blindness, I lost you. I sat in silence, letting her words sink in. Can you forgive me? I looked at the 2 women before me. The mother who had once been cold and selfish. The sister who had once been lazy and irresponsible. But they were no longer the same people I had left behind 6 years ago. I had waited for this apology my entire life. And now that it had come, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I stood up, walked over to my mother and gently embraced her. "I forgave you a long time ago." She broke down in my arms, and Sarah sat there, her eyes red with emotion. We couldn't change the past. But we could rebuild the future. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be hard days, misunderstandings, and moments when the past resurfaced like an unhealed wound. But this time we would try together. For the first time in years, I felt like family truly meant family. And that was what mattered most. Sophia's story is not just a family tragedy but a profound lesson on self-worth and personal boundaries. Sometimes, the ones we love most are the ones who manipulate us the most, and sacrifice is not always met with love or gratitude. Sophia learned that family is not just about blood ties. It's about being respected and valued. In reality, many people find themselves trapped in toxic relationships. But, like Sarah, we all have a choice: to be used or to take control of our own lives. What do you think about Sophia's story? If you were in her position, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional real-life stories about family, relationships, and life lessons.